This singular popularized image of the Yiddish-speaking light-skinned Jew is actually only but one ethnicity, known as Ashkenazi, within the Jewish community. Ashkenazi Jews from Eastern Europe make up the majority of the world's Jewish population, at about 70%. The other 30% is comprised of various ethnic groups: Ethiopian Jews, Beit Yisrael, Indian Jews, Bnei Yisrael, Chinese or Sinite Jews from Kaifeng, China, Mizrahi Jews from the Middle East, and Sephardim. The term Sephardi has been politically broadened, especially within Israel, to include any and all non-Ashkenazi Jews. However, Stephen B. Bauman argues that this rubric signals both dilution and perhaps even dissolution of the proud Sephardic heritage. So who are the actual Sephardim? The Hebrew word for Spain is Sfald. This came to influence the name Sephardim to encompass the Jews expelled from Spain and their descendants. This Sephardic diaspora came as a direct result of the Spanish Inquisition's expulsion of Jews in 1492. The Inquisition's primary purpose was to eliminate by either conversion or execution non-Catholics from Spain. In this conquest, the primary target was Spain's Jewish population. Within 14 years, 2,000 individuals, almost all of which were Jews, had been burned at the stake, while 15,000 others experienced some other form of torturous punishment. Thus, the Sephardic Jews fled and settled throughout countries on the Atlantic seaboard and the Mediterranean. Centuries after the Spanish Inquisition, a Spanish general named Francisco Franco came to power in 1939 after the nationalist victory in the Spanish Civil War. Once Franco came to power, he portrayed a hostile attitude towards the Jews, which continued into World War II. Public statements made by Franco and other government officials all supported anti-Semitism, as Spain's policies and attitudes openly favored the Axis powers. Thus, Nazi anti-Semitism was able to find a home in Spanish governmental circles. Spain's foreign minister, Ramon Serrano Suñer, was an outspoken anti-Semite. Suñer used his control of Spain's press to spread Nazi ideas, enabling racialism to manifest strongly in official Spanish propaganda. Spanish newspapers began to attack Jews, blaming them for everything from starting the war due to a desire to annihilate other people, or sexual crimes and prostitution. Spanish history books and scholars praised Ferdinand and Isabella for their solution to the Jewish problem, referring to the expulsion and mass murder of Jews during the Spanish Inquisition. Spain was urged to resume the role in the crusade against the Jews. This served to escalate the fear of Spanish Jews for their safety during the first stages of the war. On October 23, 1940, Franco meets Hitler in Andé, France, in order to officially discuss the possibility of Spain joining the Axis powers. Due to economic strain from the Spanish Civil War, Franco would not agree to enter the war without the promise of substantial new territories, most prominently French Morocco, upon the Axis powers' victory. According to reports, Franco was actually relieved when Hitler rejected this proposal, as he used his stance as a way to avoid entering the war. Franco declared Spain to take up a non-belligerency stance out of pressure, but would not take military action in the war. Hitler would go on to consistently try to persuade Franco to join his crusade, as an alliance with Spain would both decrease British morale and lose him a significant trading partner. A Spanish alliance would also allow Hitler better access to taking over British-owned Gibraltar, which contained access to both the Mediterranean and North Africa. A major shift in attitude towards Sephardim occurred in the establishment of the Primo de Rivera law, which ensured Spanish citizenship and protection to Sephardim living in other countries. Franco even gave out direct orders for protecting the lives and property of the Sephardic Jews. Spanish Jews were exempted even from wearing the yellow star, and their possessions were kept intact throughout the war. In March 1942, when reports reached the Spanish government that Sephardim were being arrested, Franco had Serrano Suñer stronghold the Spanish ambassador into releasing the Jews involved from prison. Franco even replaced the pro-Axis and anti-Semitic Suñer with Count Giordano, a friend of the Allies and sympathizer of the plight of the Jews. Because of Spanish protection, approximately 6,000 Jews were able to live, work, and survive Nazi persecution in France. Even though he made efforts to protect them, Franco preferred the Sephardic Jews still remain under Spanish protection in France. German authorities repeatedly insisted that Spain remove its Jews from areas under German control, as the Nazis did not want to permit Jews they could not persecute to remain within their jurisdiction. Due to this pressure, in 1943, Franco agreed to help the Sephardim leave France, but only on the condition that the Spanish Jews leave the occupied areas in organized groups. Franco permitted each group to enter Spain only after the previous group of Sephardim had left it to immigrate to other countries, in order to prevent Spain from becoming burdened with a huge number of refugees. These conditions placed an immense strain on refugee agencies operating in the Iberian Peninsula, since they had to arrange not only for the proper handling of refugees arriving in Spain, but also visas to other countries. There was no way of predicting the extent and duration of the Spanish government's cooperation. The slightest easing of Spanish pressure on the authorities in France could result in the incarceration and ultimately extermination of the Sephardim who were left. Fortunately, despite evacuation delays, Franco did not relax his efforts to have the refugees released from France. Even after the April 30th, 1943 deadline to evacuate Sephardim from France, Franco still managed to apply constant pressure on Spanish authorities to allow refugees to leave. Franco allowed more refugees into Spain as the German occupation crept closer to the south of France and Spanish borders, acting more progressively as the war went on. The word Holocaust is actually Greek. It comes from the Greek word holokostis. Holos mean whole, and kostis mean burnt offering. This comes to mean a sacrifice or offering entirely consumed by fire. This definition is eerily fitting, as the Jews of Greece suffered on a scale met by few other pre-war communities. The fate of Sephardic Greek Jews began with Mussolini's attack on Greece. Believing the country to be an easy target, on October 28, 1940, Greece is given an ultimatum: let the Italian army enter and occupy the country or face a violent conquest. Greece's dictator, Ioannis Metaxas, rejects the ultimatum. Within hours, Italian troops march into northern Greece from Albania. The people of Greece rally to defend the country, and within 6 weeks, drive the Italian army back into Albania. The Italian defeat was a major humiliation for the Axis powers, marking the first sign that they can be defeated. This served as inspiration to other European nations and delayed Hitler's plan to invade Russia, as German troops needed to be sent to attack and occupy Greece. In April 1941, Nazis invade northern Greece, and on April 30th, Greece surrenders. Greece is then divided into 3 zones: German, Italian, and Bulgarian. Within the Italian zone, racial laws against Jews weren't enforced, and Jews were not deported. However, this only lasted until the Italian zone came under German rule in 1943. In the Bulgarian zone, 11,000 Jews were deported to Polish gas chambers, only 2,200 of which survived. In the German zone was the worst treatment. Jews were humiliated, abused, and most were sent to camps, including the infamous Auschwitz. Salonika was, and is still regarded today, as the Sephardi metropolis. The city is known as Jerusalem of the Balkans, Mother of Israel. Located in northern Greece, Salonika was taken on April 9, 1941, as one of the first cities in Greece under occupation of the Axis powers. Just 3 days later, anti-Jewish laws were put into place. Thus proceeded the degradation and destruction of the Jews in Salonika. Among all the abuse that transpired in Salonika, one of the most infamous events was Black Saturday. On July 11, 1942, 9,000 Jewish men were collected in Freedom Square in Salonika. The occasion became one for public abuse of thousands of Jews. They were crowded together for hours under the blazing sun, bareheaded and without water, and were ordered to roll around in the dust and perform other exercises to the delight of the German and Greek onlookers. Similar acts of public degradation continued throughout the following week as a registration proceeded. Later, the Jews of Salonika and the surrounding areas were subjected to periods of forced labor under subhuman conditions. Within the city alone, over 46,000 Jews were deported to Auschwitz, amounting to a survival rate of less than 10%. A subsequent intellectual and cultural center has not yet appeared in Greece, or anywhere else, that can rival what Salonika had meant to the Sephardi world. Less than 10,000 Jews in Greece were able to survive due to Greek Christians and villagers willing to hide them. 67,000 Jews, approximately 90% of the Jewish population of Greece, died, a percentage only rivaled by the death toll in Poland. Before World War II and the events that would follow, Morocco had the largest Jewish community in the Muslim world. In August 1941, the Vichy government of France enacted laws that discriminated against Moroccan Jews. It set quotas on the number of Jewish doctors and lawyers, ejected students from French schools, and forced many Jews living in the European quarters to move to the Melas, Jewish quarters. Local business and manufacturing associations strengthened the economic implications of these anti-Jewish laws. Eager to eliminate Jewish competition, these organizations moved to expel Jewish members and fire Jewish employees. Jewish businessmen and tradesmen were harassed, expelled from business associations, and fired from their jobs. The Moroccan Sultan, Mohammed V, spoke against this, stating that the Vichy laws singling out the Jews were inconsistent with Moroccan law. He believed that Jews should be treated equally with Muslims. He emphasized that the property and lives of Jews remained under his protection. Due to his strong stance, Vichy administrators did not strictly enforce the discriminatory laws and regulations. Following the arrival of American troops in November 1942, the French closed off several Melas, and the Vichy laws were eventually repealed. In response to anti-Jewish rhetoric in the wake of the creation of the State of Israel and the eruption of the Arab-Israeli conflict, Sultan Mohammed V warned Muslims not to hurt Moroccan Jews, reminding them that Jews had always been protected in Morocco and had always showed their devotion to the throne. He emphasized that Jews were well-treated Moroccan subjects with the obligation to support the Sultan, and he voiced support for other Arab leaders. The establishment of the State of Israel and the tensions that followed contributed to 2 massacres in the eastern towns of Oujda and Jarada in June 1948. The massacres resulted in 8 deaths, 600 wounded, and 900 homeless in the Jewish community of Oujda. In Jarada, 39 were killed and 44 more were wounded. Before the founding of Israel, there were about 250 to 350,000 Jews in Morocco. Between the creation of Israel in 1948 and Morocco's independence in 1956, 90% of Moroccan Jews left the country. While some settled in Canada and France, most Moroccan Jews immigrated to Israel.
My mom, she want to go to Israel. That's what my mom did. It was her dream to come to the Holy Land.
Moroccan Jews struggled to assimilate to the Jews of Israel, as they encountered Ashkenazi culture for the first time, as well as a modern form of secular Judaism.
Our temple is something you never see temple like this. With the very beautiful windows and you sit in beautiful velvet chair. It's very, very popular. My grandpa is a rabbi. Of course, we've been in the temple night and day, Friday night, Saturday night. We did the Havdalah, everything. In Israel, lots of people, they don't follow the tradition. So it's a big difference. In Israel, they do barbecue on Shabbat, they do lots of things on Shabbat. But in Morocco, you're not allowed to do that. You don't have to be orthodox, but we're very, very, very traditional.
Today, only 2,500 Jews still remain in Morocco.
You know, Casablanca is 1,000 times more beautiful than Paris. More beautiful and more talented. That's Morocco, that's Morocco.
Libyan Jews suffered a different fate from other North African Jews, as Libya's status as an Italian colony exempted them from France's Vichy regime. In 1938, Italy established harsh discriminatory legislation against Jews. These laws, known as fascist race protection laws, were initially not strictly enforced in Libya. However, the death of Italo Balbo, the fascist governor of Libya, in 1940 ended any reprieve Jews had from Italian discriminatory laws. Jews could no longer send their children to public or private Italian schools. Intermarriages between Aryans and non-Aryans became illegal. Jews weren't allowed to be employed by the state or in any skilled professions. Jewish passports were required to be stamped Jewish race. In autumn of 1940, the war reached Libya as Italy attacked British-influenced Egypt from Libyan bases. The attack turned out to be a disastrous defeat for Italy, and British forces entered Libya. In response, Germans deployed their troops in Libya in 1941 and drove the British out. This pattern continued as the front changed hands a total of 5 times between December 1940 and January 1943. Libyan Jews showed enthusiastic support for British troops each time they entered Libya, as the discriminatory race laws were not applied during their conquest. However, each time Libya was recaptured by Italians, the Jews were severely punished for collaborating with the enemy. In 1941, 25% of Tripoli's population was Jewish and had 44 synagogues. The city of Tripoli's Jewish quarter was used for Italian anti-aircraft positions. Thus, it was subject to massive bombing by both the British and the French. One attack resulted in the destruction of 4 synagogues and the deaths of 30 Jews. Other attacks damaged the Jewish cemetery, which was used to position Italian anti-aircraft guns, where graves were stripped of tombstones in order to build fortifications. In 1942, Mussolini officiated a campaign called Sfolamento in order to disperse or remove Libyan Jews. The Sfolamento of Jews varied between different cities in the Cyrenaica area. The Jews were divided into 3 groups according to their citizenship. Jews with French citizenship or under Tunisian protection were sent to concentration camps in Algeria and Tunisia. Jews with British citizenships were sent to camps in Europe and later taken to Bergen-Belsen in Germany and Innsbruck-Reichenau in Austria. Jews holding Libyan citizenships were transported to concentration camps in Tripolitania. The 870 Jews sent to Europe received relatively decent treatment in Italian detention camps. However, this changed drastically after September 8, 1943, when Germans occupied Italy after it surrendered to the Allies. During 1944, most of the Jews were sent to Bergen-Belsen. A unique feature of the Libyan Jews sent to European camps was their maintenance of both group solidarity and kashrut, which are Jewish dietary and ritual laws. Jews in the Tripolitania region were sent to labor camps to build roads and railroads used to transport war supplies to the front lines. By June of 1942, approximately 2,600 Jews were deported to Jado labor camp in Tripolitania. A former army camp surrounded by barbed wire fence, Jado was the most brutal camp in Libya. Run by Italian commanders and guarded by Arab and Italian police, the Jews were often subject to humiliation and horrendous living conditions. Men over 18 years old were subjected to forced labor every day. The camp was severely overcrowded, forcing multiple families to sleep in shared 4-meter spaces. Daily food rations comprised of small amounts of rice, oil, sugar, and coffee substitute. Malnutrition, water shortages, overcrowding, and filth contribute to the spread of contagious diseases. Out of almost 2,600 Jews sent to Jado, 562 Jews died of weakness and hunger and typhoid fever, the highest number of Jewish victims in Islamic countries during World War II. In January 1943, the guards of the camp left. Within several weeks of their departure, British soldiers arrived, but many prisoners couldn't be moved due to their poor physical condition. In October 1943, the last group of Jewish prisoners left Jado. Following Libyan liberation, racial laws against Jews were revoked. However, strenuous conditions for Jews remained. November 1945 marks a 3-day massacre against the Jews of Tripoli. 120 Jews were killed, hundreds were wounded, 5 synagogues were destroyed, and hundreds of Jewish homes and businesses were robbed. In 1948, with the establishment of the State of Israel, anti-Semitism skyrocketed as rioters killed 12 Jews and destroyed over 280 homes. However, during this attack, the Jews defended themselves, preventing further destruction. Due to the increasingly escalating anti-Semitism in Libya, approximately 31,000 Jews immigrated to Israel. In 1961, a new law required a special permit to prove Libyan citizenship, which virtually all Jews were denied. By 1967, the Jewish population had decreased to 7,000. Following Israel's Six-Day War, anti-Semitic riots resurfaced. The king of Libya, as well as Jewish leaders, urged the remaining Libyan Jews to immigrate. An Italian airlift saved 6,000 Jews and relocated them to Rome, though they were forced to leave behind their homes, businesses, and possessions. In 1969, when Muammar al-Gaddafi came to power, there were only 100 Jews remaining in Libya. His government confiscated all Jewish property, canceled Jewish debt, and made immigration for Jews legally prohibited. However, some still escaped. Not a single Jew is left in Libya today. The anti-Semitism of World War II did not differentiate between people of different cultures and ethnicities, people who spoke different languages and had different traditions. Jews of all backgrounds were targeted. For the Sephardim, World War II had become a second diaspora, sending them further from their Spanish origins. However, the community still thrives as the survivors continue to influence both the Jewish and Mediterranean communities of today.